have the Hungry Caterpillar keyring tutorial. So I knocked this little chap up in a couple of evenings. He's quite simple to do. I don't think you have to be particularly experienced in felting to manage him. So I'm going to take you through from start to finish, so really any level would be able to make him. I'll take you through the equipment first and then we'll go from there. So here's the equipment you will need to make this little project. So I use 3 needles for this. I use the 36 green triangular needle, and that's for starting and for joining. You don't use this an awful lot. You could get away actually with ditching that and just using the next 2 if you wanted to. But I use it just to get going. The next is a 38 red triangular, and that's firming and shaping, but you can start with that because it's such a small project. Like I said, you could ditch that one altogether if you wanted. And then I use the blue triangular, and that's for details and smoothing. I use that for adding colour, putting like the little eyes on, things like that. So, but I'll talk you through that as we go. Obviously you'll need a felting mat, as you always will use when you're felting anyway. Pair of small scissors, just to cut little bits. Sometimes we cut into the walls just to shorten the fibres, and also with the feelers we use the scissors and the legs. A darning needle, that's going to get your wool through into the legs. Your filling, so you can use a core wool, which is more expensive than the filling. All my projects I use toy filling, just toy polyester filling that you can buy loads and loads of it for hardly any money at all. That's what I use for absolutely everything. You'll never catch me spending more than I need to on anything. Tape measure, again, it's not a must. I will show you to measure let's say the legs, but you don't have to. It's not a deal breaker. The same with the pliers. Sometimes when you use the darning needle through the body at the end to add the legs, it's just something to grip hold of that needle to pull it through sometimes. But again, it's not a must because I use my teeth, or I just put it towards my body and I tug it that way. So that's again not a must. And also your keyring. Again, you can buy bags and bags of these for hardly any money whatsoever. And that is all you will need equipment wise. So the wool colours we'll need, obviously use any type of wool that you're happy with and what you like. So Corriedale, Merino, whatever you've got really. Just it's a stash user. This is a great project for just for a stash buster. So I've got a little bit of red for his head, black for his mouth, yellow's going around his eyes, purple is for the feelers at the end. That's a very last addition we'll make. And just grab 3 shades of green, 3 or 4, even 2, or just do 1 colour. It's entirely up to you. This is your project and your caterpillar, so put your stamp on him. So I've gone for quite a light green there, kind of a nondescript green here, and then a darker green. And they just work really well. I thought they worked really well on the original caterpillar. So let's begin. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, if you weigh out your amounts of core or your toy filling, so I use 0.65 grams for the head, so you're going to need 1 of those, and for the body you want 8 of 0.50 grams. So 8 of 0.50 and 1 0.65. So as you can see, I now have 0.65 there, so that's going to be his head, and each one of these is 0.50, give or take 0.1 somewhere, because it's quite actually difficult to weigh these out very accurately on such tiny scales, but round about 0.50. So let's go on to making the head first. So I'm going to take you through making the head, just in case you haven't kind of made a like a spherical circle before with your felting. So I'll take you through that one, and then through probably the first body part, and then you can see how we join those and how we continue with those. As you can see, I have my my red and my amber needle. So the red in my mind is my most coarse needle, and then the second needle is the lesser coarse needle. So if this starts to get a little bit crunchy, we know to move on to our next needle. So let's start. So we're just going to felt around kind of equally, keep moving your filling around so it gets kind of equally felted around. Now the aim of this is going to be that we're going to first of all add the ring of the keyring into there before it's too felted down, and once that's in place we want to felt it to the point where it's ready to attach to the first body piece, and that's by leaving one area just that little bit unfelted, because then you can tangle those fibres together. So essentially felting is tangling fibres. So get it reasonably, looks kind of like a ball, doesn't it? So pop your ring in somewhere. Sorry, I'll do that a bit slower. Pop that in, bring some of the filling around it there, and you can see you've got your free edge there where you're going to clip onto, yeah? Bring this around and then just do a little bit of felting into there. Now already, because this is taking shape so quickly, it feels just that little bit crunchy. So I'm going to move on to my next needle. So I think this is a 36 we said when we first got our needles ready, I think. 36 triangular. And just keep going around, keep moving it round, be conscious that you're trying to make a ball there. And also, so with the caterpillar, we want to be careful where we're placing this, because we don't want this to end up kind of where his face should be. So when you're working from now, once you've got that ring into place, you can start to see this is how we're wanting to aim. So that ring towards the top on the side of his head, but we keep moving around, go from underneath as well up to where that ring has been situated, and keep just working around. And they take shape really, really quickly, which is really good especially when you're new to felting as well. When you start to see results early, it gives you that drive to keep trying. Now if you start to feel this is a bit, you know, that there's not much, there's not enough kind of filling between the ring and that, then you can just push it in a little bit more and just fold a little bit more over there, and then just join. Always see it as where you're going. You're joining those fibres in there, you see, and just back over there. So just give it a really good join. And make sure that you also go around where we've popped this ring in there, around the edges. We want that really well in there, nice and secure. Go over it, around it, and then just make it secure there. And keep working around. Watch your fingers, and you'll see it start to take shape. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with this for a little while, and we'll come back when that's at about the point where we need to stop, and I'll show you the difference between this and when we're going to stop before we make the first body piece and add that on. So the head is about ready to go. Now as you can see, it's slightly misshapen. The reason for that is I've got it down to the size and the shape that I want. It'll start to feel a little bit crunchy when it's ready, and you don't want to felt too much more than that because we've still yet to add the colour. Now I've left this side here, as you can see, that's where the first body part is going to join here. I've left that just that little bit fluffy, okay, because then when we've made this first body part, we can then leave that side a little bit fluffy and then join the two. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I've got my first bit here of the 0.50 grams body part, so we have 8 of these, okay, and then let's start with our coarse needle. So we're just going to make this into a ball. So keep moving it around, just keep going in, you're just pushing those fibres into the middle there and giving it shape and definition. Keep working around. Again, if you keep hearing a funny noise in the background, it's my little dog jumping onto the beanbag that he sits on when I'm working. And we just keep going round and round. It's really therapeutic, and sometimes I kind of feel when I'm demonstrating, sometimes I feel like, oh crikey, just hurry up, get it done, but I just really enjoy the process, so I don't usually work quite this fast, to be honest. So if I do catch my finger, that's probably why. Now you can get finger shields, as you probably already know, to wear, but I just find that kind of negates being able to feel things and feel how felted they are, etc. So I don't tend to use them at my own peril most of the time. I just keep working around, and also if you feel it's not quite in shape either, just roll it between your hands and that will just get it to where you want it to be. Always be the boss of your work, don't let it be the boss of you. So keep working around. I can feel that starting to felt up and start to get firmer, so I'm going to switch on to my next needle. So that's just one step finer than this needle. Keep working around. Now it won't be long until I need to start thinking about joining, so what I'm going to do is there's a natural kind of more fluffy area there, so I'm just going to be conscious of that. So that's going to want to attach onto the head at that kind of an angle, so I'm going to leave that now and stop felting there, because that's what's going to attach to the head. Now when I've shown you these two and attach them, what I'll do is I'll go off, make all the other sections of the body, and then I'll show you adding colour, etc. Just use the picture as a point of reference, and always be conscious that wherever you're going to join to, just leave that area just that little bit more fluffy. It's just going to make you join a lot easier. It's not the end of the world if you go hell for leather and fully felt down a perfect ball. You can still attach it. It's just this makes it slightly easier. That's the only reason I'm saying just leave that a bit less felted. So don't worry too much if you enthusiasm knows no bounds and you suddenly remember about the fluffy parts and you sat there with your perfect little spherical ball. It doesn't matter. Okay. And you can see it's starting to get to the kind of size we want. We can go a little bit further. Just always remember you've got to add your colour as well, and that's always going to naturally felt it just that little bit further. So if you've already done one like I have, you don't want to be thinking, it's a bit too big, I need to felt it down a lot more, because when I add the colour, that's going to naturally felt that down a little bit more. So I'm almost done on this one, and then we'll do a join, and then I'll make the other sections and we'll come back. So I want quite a nice succinct video. I do put my timestamps on all of my videos, because there's nothing more frustrating than, especially if you're quite experienced and you just want to know, you know, how I put this together. It's easier just to jump through the videos using the timestamps in the description, which is what I will do for you. Okay, I'm happy with that. So that's kind of the shape we're after. So it goes up onto an angle like this, because we're going to go quite high up to come back down again. So that's where I'm going to join. So you can use where it's a little bit fluffier there and just push that into place, and those fibres are just going to start to tangle together. And don't worry too much about the definition there either, because we can sort that afterwards. So just go in. Each time you push that in, you're getting more fibres just bonding together, and that's what it's going to do. It's going to bond the head and it's going to bond that first section of the body. So just keep going. Don't worry about the definition yet. It starts to look a bit like one piece. It's not a problem, and we can sort it. we've got this. And turn, and then push into there, count with your fingers. Just keep working around, keep joining, keep checking as well, check you're happy with your angle there. And I'm going to have to turn that, I might go out of your view a little bit while I work down here, but just push in, join it, join it, join it, join it. We want it nice and secure. And then you can start to bring that fluff down as well, just felt that in as you start to join. So that's it. So you can push that in quite deeply, just be aware of your fingers behind it, okay? Okay, so what you end up with is this, and you can tell that that looks quite misshapen compared to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my coarsest needle that I've used for this project, and I'll felt down the little pieces that the fluff hasn't quite gone away where I've joined. Do a little bit more joining as I go around, but then you can start to give definition, you see, so you can start to work around and think about that definition. Because it's joined really well in the middle, you can now afford to get that definition perfected, you see, as you go around. And as per all felting projects as well, it's very forgiving. So as you go through the project, you can look and think, the head looks a bit fluffy there or whatever, and add a bit there, or there's that little bit jutting up there, so just push that in, just keep going, trust the process. And I know that's so easy to say, and sometimes you kind of want to tell people where to shove their process, but believe me, the process will never fail you. Okay, so let's have a look. So there we go. So we have that first section of body there. So I'm going to go and make the other sections, and I'm going to join them exactly the same as I've done this, and then we'll come back and then we'll have our blank caterpillar canvas to work on and begin to add colour. All right. So there we are, that's all of our body parts attached. As you can see, it sits slightly bigger than the completed version because, like I said, that is going to get smaller when we add the colour. So there we have our basic caterpillar, and it's in shape. If you do this and you're not liking the shape, you can move it around a bit and then just get a nice coarse needle to join and just shuffle them about and then do a bit more joining until you're happy with the shape. But you can also move them around once the colour's on as well. So the next step will be his head and his face. So now it's time to add the red onto his head up here. So I'm going to use my fine needle for this because I don't want to felt it down and, you know, get that much smaller, that head there. So if I take my fine needle, and then we just take small little pieces. The thing I love about this project as well, I usually start where the join is, as you can see, is that you don't have to be very exacting with your colour, because if you actually look at the Very Hungry Caterpillar book, it's a very sketchy kind of colour fill, so you can see colour through, so you can be quite haphazard with this. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be beautifully smooth. So we just add the colour. Where the ring is there, I just tend to split those fibres apart like that, and then you can just mould them where you want them. And as I said, don't felt in too much, you're just doing enough to kind of tack this colour onto the project. We're not going in deep as we would be if we're trying to push those fibres centrally to give shape. So let's just, so there you go, it's enough just tacking it on. And another little piece, so I'll put this through that ring there and round, and then we can start to cover around the ring. I'm not worrying too much about here where this kind of seam joint, whatever you would call it, will be. I want to get the colour on, and then I'll show you what we do with that part. So just keep adding and adding. Let's get some more onto this side, just little pieces at a time, that's all it needs. And as we did when we placed the ring, if you just kind of poke around there so the wool sits nicely and it looks more integral to the piece, then all the better. So just keep going around with your colour. I'll pop back when the colour is on, and then I can show you how we're going to get that definition just around the joint to the first part of the body. There we go, so there's the red on the on his head there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my coarse needle, so thinking back, that is the green 36 green triangular, and that's the starter and joining needle, and then just where it's going to join to the body there where it attaches, just pull your fibres up and push in. And do that all around the head, because that is going to neaten your line. Because you can see little stray bits there of wool. And just pull those back all the way around. And just try and move it so you can see it. It's hard to get you to see it and me to be able to do it sometimes, but okay, so just pull it back, pull it back. Just move those fibres all the way around and just get that line nice and even. So before we go to that first body piece, we've got a nice defined head there. So just keep working around until you're happy with it. I'm not going to go too mad because we'll join the green onto this next piece. And you can see those two have really melded these, but you can see very quickly when you start to manipulate that with the needle, that gets more definition. So we're going to go on to the first green piece, which is a light green. So I'll add the light green, come back, and then we'll show you how to join that line and make that lovely and neat. So I added a couple of colours actually, because I think it's going to be actually easier to show you once a couple of colours are added. So you can see it all looks a bit, it's not as defined as you'd want your caterpillar to be. So take your coarse needle once you've got a colour on, and then you're going to just go between. Now you may have to go a bit of a diagonal too, to get that needle right into there. So just move some fibres like you did when you were just perfecting the red around that edge, and go all around. If you see any bits start to lift up as well, you can just felt that colour in a little bit. So go all around. Be careful with your fingers on the other side if you have the habit of lifting your project off the mat like I do. So keep going around. You see that definition starting to come now a little bit, so move on to your next colour. Go between those colours, and around. And you'll see by eye when it starts to kind of look and feel right and you're happy that's looking like a caterpillar. Okay, so it's beginning to take shape a little bit more now. There we go. So I'll add the rest of the colours and then we will come back to add his face and his little feelers. So let's get those colours on. Okay, so the colours have now been added and I've taken a coarse needle and gone around each section there just to make it look more caterpillar-y, although that's, don't doubt that's not a word. So for his face then, 2 tiny pieces of green wool and a tiny piece of black and just a little sliver of yellow as well. So his eyes are actually going to be green, so let me take my first piece. So take a very small piece and what I do is I just roll it to see the size. Now I can see already that that is way too big, so I'm going to cut that in half and then have another little look in comparison to his face. Okay, I'll take a little bit more off there and try and even that up with that as well. So just roll it. I'm relatively happy with that. There's no great science to this. So I'm going to take my fine needle for this because we're doing fine detail. So this needle is, let me have a think, it's the blue, it's the 40 blue triangular, and that's for details and smoothing. So just roll the piece between your fingers, kind of get it into a rough eye shape, so it's kind of like an oval. And they don't have to be exact, don't worry about that, because you can really move things around. So I just pick it up with my needle, place it where I want it to be roughly, put that a little bit higher, and then just work that needle through into the middle. I'm going to do the same with the next eye. That looks a tiny bit smaller, so I might just add, if I can find my wool again, there we go. Just add the tiniest bit onto there. I might have gone over TT now. And this is the thing, it's just getting the balance, isn't it? So that feels better. So pick it up with my needle, place it on roughly where I want it, and then fix it in the middle, like through the middle of the piece. Now once each eye is fixed, then I'm going to work on shaping around, so, and just trying to get them relatively uniform in their size. And again, you don't have to go crazy, you don't have to kind of push your needle all the way through, it's just affixing it to the piece. Have a look. And again, the beauty about this project is that the Very Hungry Caterpillar is drawn quite roughly. It's quite a rough drawing, so you don't have to have really neat perfect lines or anything like that. And always remember as well, with my work, I say to people, what I do is a representation of children's characters. That's what I do. So for example, when I did Princess Peach, I just visualised her in a more kind of 80s puffy wedding dress, and that's what I did for her. So you know, you can go off the rails, just go off the rails. Right, yellow to go around the outside, so just pull that, it's going to be fine like that. So quite a fine yellow. I think I want that just a tiny bit thicker. But again, you can add. So if you go around and you decide to add, you can add. So I just give it a little twist, just so it holds onto each other, those little threads. So we've got our fine needle, place it onto where you want it. So I'm going to start up there. I'm going to hold it quite taut, place it around where I want it, and then pop your needle through to hold it in place. Okay, so that's held in place now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just pull that around with the needle. You don't even have to really use your hands much, and you're just going to push your needle in just so it holds into place around the eye. So I'll just do that a little bit. So excuse me if my hand gets in the way. So it's just a couple of pushes, and we're working around, moving that thread as we go. And come around this side. It is literally just a couple of little pushes of your needle to get that in there. Bring round here. And round to meet. Now what you're going to do, because you're going to have a bit of excess there, is, okay, so you've got your excess, you've got your yellow around the eye. Now cut your excess, leaving just a tiny little bit there, and then using your needle, we're just going to push that in and around. So just work that around, use your needle. My needle's just the greatest tool, because you bring it round, look, like that. And keep going. I might need to give it a little poke with some scissors or my fingers in a minute, just to move it. We're going to get there. Apologies for my hands. Just hold that there. And this bit, of course, you'll push that in just a little bit more, because otherwise it's going to look much thicker than the original strand we've hooked on there. Come on, in you go. Okay, well, just go around and make sure it's all looking good. And there, and around, just with a little poke in the middle. Okay, so that's one eye. Okay, so we're going to do the same for the second eye, and then I will come back for the mouth and the little feelers. So there we are. He's got his two little eyes, looking very, very cute. So his mouth, tiniest little piece of black. You need barely anything at all. I might actually make that a little bit smaller. Roll it again, so just roll it into a ball. Take your fine needle and again just pick it up. So you're going to place it where you want, push it in. Now his mouth is quite small on the picture, so I am going to push this in just that little bit further, whilst trying to keep it central and between his eyes there. I'll just pop that in, almost like in a little O shape, like he's surprised. Yeah, I'm relatively happy with that. Might just go for a little bit deeper in there. Just do everything by eye, whatever you're happy with works. Okay, so there's his little face. So on to his feelers. Sorry, there was no need to cut in that video then, but I wasn't sure where I'd put the purple. So his little feelers are purple. And what we're going to do, again, tiny pieces. This is why I love these projects, because they're just, you use hardly any of your stash. Okay, so take two pretty tiny pieces. That's got a little little knot in it. I don't want that. Two pretty tiny pieces, and then just roll between your fingers. Second, I think that's probably a bit thinner, so let's add a tiniest bit more on there. Roll between your fingers. And what is important to do is to leave the bottom with a little bit of fluff on it or a little bit of an end on it. So you're not going to do that exactly to the length that you're going to want it on him. So let's say, let's look at this one. I do like a little point on the end, but probably not that long. I've got a little trim. So we're going for about like so big on his head maybe. But the tail end is going to be the end that we're going to belt in. Take a little bit off there. And the same with the second. Relatively match them up on length, but again, it's not vital because we can use artistic license. Now what I'm going to use now is just a little bit of glue, just to grab a little bit of clear PVA or PVA that dries clear. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop, again excuse the awful tan on my hands, just the tiniest bit of PVA glue on my hand, and then I'm just going to roll the upper half in the PVA glue. And this one. Don't get glue on the bottom part, that's the bit we're going to felt into his head afterwards. So once it's got some glue on it, just roll it again between your fingers, twist it, do whatever, just get it into shape so you're happy with the shape. And I'm just going to pop that aside and let that dry. Again, try and get that. If anyone's a good palm reader, feel free to read my palm while we're at it. I've always wanted to be able to do that. I can't do that. I can read tarot, but I can't read palms. Okay, so there. So I'll pop that aside. I'm just going to go and wash my hands because I'm covered in glue now, and then we can add his legs. We are so nearly done. We're very close to completion now. Okay, so at this point we're going to need our awl, that's AWL. We're going to need a darning needle, a tape measure, kind of if you want to be more particular but you really don't need to be, and some brown or black wool or whatever colour you've decided to do your legs. So I'm going to cut 8 lengths, around about 6 inches. Doesn't have to be exact, they're all going to be trimmed down anyway. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. There we go. Scissors can go aside. Let's get the tape measure out of the way as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is take your first piece and thread the needle. You can always as well, on the ends of the these pieces of wool, you could always add a little bit of PVA on the end there if you're worried about it fraying. I don't, just because I'm just not very particular, and I kind of like that. Like I said, it's kind of a rough drawn character, the Hungry Caterpillar, so I'm not too worried about it, but you can just pop a little bit of PVA on the end there if you like when you do the feelers, and leave them to dry and then do this part, but that's entirely up to you. So take your awl, so this is designed, like I said earlier, to move wool and to make that gap for us to go into. So take your first section of body. I've already marked it out there so you can see. Just kind of look relatively centrally into the body. Now you push it all through. It does sometimes take a bit of twisting and manipulating, but push it through all the way, and there you go. So that's going to make that space now for the needle just that little bit easier. Now I do have on hand, it's up to you if you want to, I do have on hand just some jewellery pliers, just in case it's a bit tricky to push through. But you won't necessarily need that. You can work a bit more and, you know, do a larger hole or whatever. I'll have those at hand because you don't want to spend the next 5 minutes watching me fight with a darning needle, essentially. So pull that out. That's made a gap and you can see the gap. push your needle through to the other side. This is when sometimes I like to grip and pull. Just give it a little wiggle. I'll do it with my hands. I might have to go off camera while I pull this. That's it. I just needed to kind of put it against my chest to have a bit of a pull. So there we go. So that's one through. And then we're going to pop one into each part of the body, and then we'll come back to trim up and add his feelers. So here he is, looking like a little daddy long legs. So we're ready to trim these legs now. He looks a bit funny as it stands. So round about 1.5 centimetres per leg, I'd say, to 2 centimetres tops. But I'll do it by eye anyway, but if you want to measure, that's around about what you're looking at. So I'll work my way down one side and then I'll get to the other side. So a couple of centimetres. Oops. Okay, so that's one side. And then turn him over and work down the second side. Just a couple of centimetres. Now what you're going to notice is that the legs kind of stick up a little bit. So a little trick for you coming up. Let's take these off here. So now at this point, where you can see his legs kind of stick up a little bit, let's show you like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a medium needle, so I'll probably use my 38 triangular. And then just lay his leg down flat to his body like that, and just 1 or 2 little pokes in, and you'll see immediately that leg is sitting flatter. So work along each side, just a couple of pushes in. Keep it a little bit taut, but don't pull too hard or it will come through the other side. And the last. And then turn him over. And let's do the same again. Once his legs are all in place, you can also kind of look at your lengths and trim or whatever you want to do. It is your destiny, your caterpillar destiny. Let's get that one down a bit. And this one. And that one. So I'm sure you can see the difference in how it's sitting now. It just sits a lot more neatly. So let's do the last little piece, and that is his little feelers. They're relatively dry because between sessions I've been out walking the dogs and letting these sit in the sun, so they should be quite dry. So again, take a mid to fine needle, it doesn't matter what, and then place around about where you want it on his head, somewhere above his eyes, on top of his head, and then just push into the top of his head. And you can also bring that piece down towards you if it's not quite sitting up, like kind of sticking up. Just fold it towards you there and do a couple of pushes of the needle there. So let's just get that into a happy. And like the eye too, when you're happy with placement, I'm going to do the second one first just in case. Once you're happy with placement, you can trim this little bit off and then just push the little ends in. So I just want to make sure they're kind of equidistant, etc. Okay, come on, come on, come on. So it's kind of mid to the eye, that one, so let's try and replicate. Okay, and then I'm going to fold that back on itself, work into the back. No, I'm not, because that's come out again. Hang on. Let me hold that down flat. Right, if you are struggling, as I am right now, it can just be a case of just grab a coarser needle. There's my coarser needle. Because what I've done is I've worked onto there where there's a little bit of glue and it's not liking it, so just give that a little poke into that. Now it's going. Okay. Give it a little twist, make sure you're happy with it. Looking at the lengths, evening that up. Then I'm going to trim quite close to the base there, and then I'll probably keep using my coarse just to poke those through and make sure they're sitting relatively where I want them to be. In you go. It will take a little bit of jiggery pokery until you're at a point where you're satisfied, and you can trim them, do whatever you want with them to make them look. Just going to trim a little bit off there, a little bit off there. Give it a little twist. Okay, and as you can see, that's kind of made the head's kind of puffed out a little bit up there, so I'll just take a needle and just belt that down a little bit again. And there you have it. There he is. Now in total, I would say he probably took, because of course I've braked throughout this video, probably start to finish you're talking an hour to an hour and a half to make this. So as I said, it might not be the best thing to make and sell, but it's certainly a great thing for a gift that doesn't take long to make. So the final piece will be to put his little clip on. Just spin that round, and that spins round easily in the head too. Okay. And let's all the way around. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Oh, I took it back off again. Let's try that again. This is the pièce de résistance. There we go. And there you have, let's just put that there, the hungry caterpillar keyring. And he's just such a cutie. Now even at this point, if you look at his shape and you think, you know, let's move a leg, whatever, you can do that. You can reshape him and pop your coarse needle in and just adjust how he sits, and that's absolutely fine. There we go. Now this one is made on here. I'm doing a little competition for him. So I've kept my first one that I did. He was my little prototype, so he's going to stay on my handbag. But this one, what we're going to do is, I've just launched my website, which is Melanie's Wool Workshop, all one word, .co.uk. And the first person who goes onto that website and can use the link to email me through there, telling me the first set of children's characters that I've posted onto my website, will win this little guy there. Okay, so hopefully you've made a caterpillar, and if you haven't and you've just watched the video, then hopefully you'll win a caterpillar. So thanks for watching.